we Australians, are at war in Afghanistan. It's not a big war by historical standards, but it is a real one. Real people are getting killed, including real Australians. The reasons why we are at war, I suppose one has to say, political, more specifically, geopolitical. But in this war, there's an unusually strong ideological component. The people we define as the enemy, whom I'll, for convenience, call the Taliban, detest all that we stand for, or at least all that we stand for to their way of thinking, and would like to see it wiped off the face of the earth. As for us, most of us believe that if the ideas the Taliban stand for were to triumph, the world would be a much worse place. If you've never had a face-to-face chat with an Islamic fundamentalist, look at Orhan Pamuk's novel Snow, first published in 2004. Snow contains a scene in which the lead character, whom one can briefly characterize as a modern secular intellectual, meets a fundamentalist activist in a cafe and tries to get through to him, tries to have an ordinary human conversation. What is striking about the verbal interaction between the two men, I won't call it a dialogue, is its asymmetry. One of the two, the lead character, is curious about the other in the way that we are curious about any new acquaintance. We want to see what kind of person they are, what makes them tick. His antagonist, on the other hand, is utterly incurious. He knows in advance what kind of person he will be speaking to, and what he doesn't know, he doesn't want to know. He knows because he has been told, because he has it on authority. The two are polite to each other in a limited sense, the sense that neither offers violence to the other, but there's no real dialogue, no exchange of views. Whether the Taliban are actually evil, I wouldn't know. Nonetheless, people like the fundamentalists in Pamuk's book send a chill up my spine, as I would guess they send a chill up Pamuk's spine, and the spine of anyone else one could loosely call a secular intellectual, particularly a secular intellectual in the Western tradition. To the Western secular mind, there is something inhumane and perhaps even inhuman in that incuriosity about the world, that unquestioned belief that there is nothing more that needs to be known. I come to the point. Incuriosity about the world, and specifically incuriosity about the other whom you are meeting face to face, was not invented by the Taliban. The 20th century, to go back no further than the 20th century, was full of mass movements: communism, fascism, National Socialism, Maoism, characterized by doctrinaire certainty. Movements that became mass movements precisely by indoctrinating, a tendentious word, but let me use it, indoctrinating their followers with certainties about how the world worked. To Western secular intellectuals, what is most repellent about such movements is their quasi-religious nature, that is to say, their reliance on quasi-religious bodies of doctrine and their demands for quasi-religious faith in that doctrine. The three great criminal figures who bestride the 20th century are Stalin, Hitler, and Mao. But lagging not far behind comes Pol Pot, leader of the Khmer Rouge, who might very well have moved into the major league had he had a bigger field in which to operate. Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, they're all dead, but very properly, we continue to be curious about them, to try to understand how human beings could have carried out such unspeakable acts of cruelty and destruction. We are curious about them even though they, if they were still alive, would be utterly incurious about us. They know all about people like us, know us and despise us. That is to say, we persist in our asymmetrical relationship with them. To terminate that relationship, curiosity on our side, answering to incuriosity on theirs, would mean ceasing to be human. It would mean going over to warfare. Patrick Allington has written a novel about Cambodia and Western relations with Cambodia during Cambodia's darkest days. The focus of his attention is a man he calls Nem, who has a very specific model among the real-life leaders of the Khmer Rouge. The question he asks about Nem is, what drives a man like this? What does such a man have to be? And more specifically, what does such a man have deliberately to cease to be? What does he have to give up in order to attain his goals? Patrick Allington is curious about Nem and people like Nem in a way that Nem is not curious about Patrick and people like him, represented in the novel by the Australian journalist Ted Whittlemore. But Nem is not a mere robot. On the contrary, he is an intelligent person, even an intellectual in a limited, instrumental way. He has a sense of history and of the fashions in thought or currents in thought that shape the way history is written. Today, the Khmer Rouge may be looked down on as a vicious, obscurantist little Cambodian nationalist movement. But who knows about tomorrow? Here are Nem Kiri's defiant last words. It is far too soon to be talking about history. What's good today will one day seem bad, and today's criminals are destined to be tomorrow's heroes of the future. That's so much for now. If the universe is indeed ruled by chance, who can say what reversals the future may not hold? At a practical level, Nem Kiri has an acute sense of how important it is to keep the three-syllable word genocide out of the historical record. Like the leaders of Turkey today, like the leaders in the Sudan, he knows that once it finds its way into the record, it takes all hell to erase it. Some of the most mordant pages in Figurehead show the agile Nem persuading Western negotiators to accept some or other bland verbal substitute for that damning word in their communiques. This is a book from which the West emerges smelling not much better than the Khmer Rouge. Figurehead is an historical novel in the best sense of the term. It deals with important public events, or events that would have been public if we had not found it more convenient to avert our gaze, and with the role of individuals in shaping those events. It deals with the intersection between the public and the personal, the political and the moral. And it does all of this with a light touch. It achieves that lightness of touch by keeping its focus on individual human actors and what drives individual action. It works by creating scenes that live on the page and imprint themselves on the memory. Two emblematic examples: the return of the vain, pleasure-loving Prince Sihanouk and his Princess Monique to the ghostly city of Phnom Penh, from which all the inhabitants have been cleared. Second, the demise of the sinister Pol Pot, or as his associates prefer to call him, big brother, half paralyzed, unable to walk, his gums black with decay.